Large swathes of Europe are sweltering as what's called a heat dome traps hot air.
In New York yesterday, the city seeing its hottest temperature since 1888 with highs approaching 100.
Perfectly good tomatoes are being plowed over instead of picked. It's a sad scene happening in South Florida.
In this video, we're going to take a closer look at the news today, specifically what it could be telling us about our food supply, as what we've been seeing in the news really warrants a deeper examination of how fragile and frayed our food supply is becoming. I'm going to alert you to what I'm reading between the lines of most of the news articles that I'm seeing, from extreme weather to global conflicts. And more importantly, I'm going to tell you what you need to do today to stay ahead of the larger food supply crisis and the things that I've already started doing that you might want to emulate before it becomes more challenging to do so. We're also going to have another great giveaway, and I'll let you know how you can enter this week's giveaway, so stick around for that. If you're new to this channel, my name is Chris, and on this channel we discuss emergency preparedness, aka prepping. Now, the headlines may not always say food crisis, but you need to read between the lines and the story really becomes clear. Crop failures, conflict, trade disruptions, and extreme weather, they're all adding pressure to a system that's already stretched to its limits. And if we're astute observers, we can become aware and act accordingly before the cracks become breaks. And that's why I do these news segments, to really give you information to help you make the right decision for you. In today's video, I want to show you what's unfolding, even though it's not really getting a lot of coverage, and more importantly, what you can do to start preparing and what I'm doing right now to protect my food supply. Let's take a closer look. Burning signals. Record-breaking heat has become a global reality, and its impact on our food supply is undeniable. Europe is enduring some of the worst heat waves ever recorded. Spain recently reached 46 degrees Celsius, which is about 115 degrees Fahrenheit, while Italy issued red alerts for cities such as Rome and Milan. Wildfires, they have swept through farmland and forced mass evacuations, including on the Greek Isle of Crete, where over 5,000 people fled their homes and olive groves. Now, agricultural damage is often underreported, but it's profound. It's characterized by scorched crops, degraded soil, and disrupted harvests. Now, in the United States, extreme heat is becoming the new normal. The East Coast broke records last summer, and some of those were broken again just last week. What were once rare extreme events are now becoming routine. Prolonged drought and erratic weather, they're compounding the problem. All of Utah, actually 99.99% of it, is currently in moderate or severe drought. And these hot spots, they are spreading. They're drying out crops, and they're cutting yields across the country and beyond. Now, the science behind these patterns has been clear for years, but the effects are now immediate. Rising heat, it dries out soil, it reduces water for agriculture, and it stresses fragile ecosystems. Extreme weather, like hurricanes and wildfires, hits food production hard. Hurricane Ian in 2022 caused up to $2 billion in agricultural losses, wiping out Florida's citrus groves and damaging infrastructure. And these disasters, they ripple outward, disrupting supply chains, increasing costs, and driving up grocery prices. Citrus farmers were already battling citrus green disease, a bacterial infection that kills trees and ruins fruit. The disease worsens with heat and drought, which weaken trees and create ideal conditions for insects to thrive. Hurricane losses only add to the strain on groves that are already in decline. And this is not just one event or crop. It encompasses a broader range of issues. It's a pattern of overlapping stresses. Farmers recovering from storms are also battling disease, degraded soil, rising costs for feed, fertilizer, labor, and water shortages. And the time between disasters is beginning to shrink. Even when a harvest is salvaged, the underlying problems persist, further weakening the system. And at the same time, zoonotic diseases, those that are spread from animals to humans, they are no longer distant concerns. The recent wave of avian flu H5N1 led to the culling of millions of birds and disrupted egg and poultry supplies. And shifting weather altered migratory bird routes, spreading the virus into commercial flocks. And as hens died, egg and poultry meat production fell. Shortages worsen due to fewer laying hens and rising feed costs, which have increased as a result of high fertilizer prices and poor grain yields resulting from adverse weather conditions. Climate stress is also weakening animal immune systems and creating conditions where viruses can spread more easily. These pressures, they extend throughout the entire supply chain, from labor to logistics, highlighting the interconnected nature of our food systems. And when we connect the dots of heat waves, droughts, storms, wildfires, and animal diseases, a larger pattern emerges. Picture it this way. Imagine you have a dam that's bringing not just one big leak, but 20 or more so minor leaks that are getting bigger with each passing moment. And although you can focus on the one biggest leak, the one grabbing all the headlines, you have 19 or more leaks that are weakening the entire structure of the dam. Each stressor adds pressure to a system that's already stretched to its limits. The dam here is our food supply chain, and this is not speculation. These are real signals that are already reshaping the stability and accessibility of our food. And just as the signals grow louder, the scientists tracking them, they're leaving. In the United States and elsewhere, climate and weather experts are facing burnout, job cuts, and even retaliation. In recent years, scientists have been undeniably pushed out or silenced. Some federal agencies, they've lost funding, and we've reduced the number of food inspections and inspectors, which makes the prevalence of foodborne illnesses much higher, and our food supply, controlled by others, more dangerous to our own health. And there are fewer people watching the data, raising the alarm, and monitoring our food supply. So as the evidence builds, grounded in what we're already seeing with our own eyes, the question remains, are we listening? And who's really left to listen if we're not? Please share your thoughts on this in the comments section below. What does this mean to us? We can no longer assume the food system is going to adapt to whatever comes next. We can't count on easily switching from one fall crop to another or assume the only impact will be just higher prices until we're completely priced out. The effects of heat, drought, disease, and supply chain issues are no longer theoretical. They're showing up in grocery prices, crop losses, and empty shelves. And these aren't just isolated events, but they're signs of a growing strain that weakens the food supply each season. As recovery time shrinks and problems stack up, even strong systems begin to fail. And with fewer experts tracking these shifts, warnings they may come too late. The solution, more on that shortly, is to take responsibility for part of our own food security now. Recognizing and acting on these signals really gives us a better chance to endure what's already happening. Thanks to EcoFlow for sponsoring this YouTube ad-free video. The EcoFlow Delta Pro and the new Anker F3000, they're both strong contenders in the portable power space. On paper, their capabilities look nearly identical. Even the price is about the same. But when it comes to real-world experience, there's one key difference: proven reliability. I've owned the EcoFlow Delta Pro for almost 4 years now, and I've tested numerous solar generators over the years, but I've never given away the EcoFlow Delta Pro units that I have. Why? They're built like a tank. I push them hard, running tools, appliances, and critical loads during outages, and they just keep working. No failures, and that really matters to me. The Anker F3000 is impressive for a new release. However, the EcoFlow Delta Pro has something rare, a proven track record. Now, I constantly get asked when reviewing these types of units, yeah, but how does it perform after a year or two? With this one, I know that after 4 years, it's still one of my go-to units. EcoFlow also supports it with regular software updates, keeping it current. And that kind of longevity and consistent performance is tough to beat. So while both units are capable, when I need something I can count on, especially for emergency backup or long-term off-grid use, I stick with what's already proven. If you'd like to check it out during the Prime Day discounts, I'll post a link below. Global pressures. If extreme weather is one part of the pressure on our food supply, geopolitical conflict is the other. Now, these two forces, they often overlap, compounding each other's effects and reshaping global food systems in ways that are hard to undo. In fact, while heat and drought really grab the headlines, it's the strategic shifts, export bans, and disrupted trade routes behind the scenes that can have the most lasting impact on what ends up on your table. Now, across Europe, last month's record heat didn't just make headlines, it significantly damaged crops. In Spain and Italy, where grain, olive oil, and vegetable production is central to the region's food system, high temperatures and dry winds have scorched fields during a critical stage of plant development. Yields are expected to fall significantly this year, worsening Europe's already fragile food inflation. And we warned about olive oil production right before the last major spike drove up prices, and you can be sure to look out for another price spike from these events, as about 80% of the U.S. olive oil imports come from these impacted regions. And these kind of weather-linked crop failures are becoming more common, but they don't happen in just isolation. The war in Ukraine continues to disrupt global food markets as Ukraine and Russia together once supplied nearly 30% of the world's wheat exports. But following the 2022 invasion, Ukrainian wheat exports, they plummeted and prices have soared, with only a partial recovery after temporary agreements allowed for limited shipments. And although Ukraine has since rerouted some grain exports overland, this ongoing conflict and policy shifts continues to keep global supplies and prices volatile, underscoring the ongoing strain on food security due to geopolitics. Sunflower oil followed a similar path. And while sunflower oil is not really a big consumable on the American store shelf, it is for much of the rest of the world. When it decreases or is disrupted over there, it puts pressure on alternative oils that are sold over here. Ukraine had been the largest global exporter, and when crushing facilities shut down and shipments halted, prices nearly doubled. Food producers have scrambled to reformulate recipes using alternate oils, which in turn drove up the cost of palm and soybean oil worldwide. Countries like France even temporarily suspended strict food labeling rules to allow manufacturers to switch ingredients without immediately updating packaging. The broader consequences have been especially harsh for nations that rely on these imports like Egypt, Lebanon, and Bangladesh, where even small price shifts can drive widespread food insecurity. But the ripple effects don't just stop there. Russia used its own wheat exports to gain leverage in global politics, offering grain to nations in need and positioning itself as an indispensable supplier while Ukraine has struggled. It was a clear example of food being used as a tool of influence. Meanwhile, even in countries like the United States, where we grow massive quantities of food, the system is more global and fragile than it appears. Just because it's grown here doesn't mean that it stays here or that it's even used as food. Around half of all U.S. wheat and soybeans, they're exported. Approximately 40 to 45% of American rice is exported, and out of the corn we grow, nearly half is used for fuel rather than food. A significant portion of what remains is used to feed livestock. Food grown on American soil is tied to global markets, trade deals, and commodity pricing, and not necessarily local food security. And when other countries restrict their exports, like India recently did with rice or China did by stockpiling grain, it further distorts global supply and pricing. That distortion eventually reaches us, whether through higher prices, limited availability, or both. And the global nature of our food system means that a flood in Pakistan or a tariff in Canada can eventually affect your grocery bill in Texas or Ohio. And we're not just facing bad weather, we're dealing with a strained, interconnected system. And that's why building personal and local food resilience really matters more than ever. What happens across the globe now affects what we see and pay here at the store. Have you ever noticed global events impacting your food supply? I only touched on just a few examples. There are many more, including widespread crop failures. So share what you're seeing in the comments below. What does this mean to us? The stability of our food supply is becoming tested on many fronts as heat, conflict, disease, and trade disruptions really take a visible toll. Crops are damaged, export routes are blocked, input costs are rising, and supply chains, they are strained. Even in the United States, much of what we grow is tied to trade or fuel. So what is available today may not be available tomorrow. And this goes beyond just price. It's about whether food is available and accessible at all. Multiple pressures are converging to weaken a system we've long relied on, just as the experts tracking these changes are being sidelined or just let go. And we can't control global events any more than we can control the weather. We can, though, take practical steps to protect ourselves. We can take steps today to regain some responsibility and control over our own food supply. Food solutions. Everything we've discussed points to two clear realities. Our food system is under severe stress, and it's getting worse. And this is not just one problem, but rather a buildup of many small fractures, including shifting weather patterns, global conflicts, supply chain issues, and economic pressures. If you're paying attention, it's dominating the headlines and your news feed every day, though food may not even be a word used in the news headline or article. You may not even be seeing the bigger picture of what all this really points to, but you can't miss the numerous headlines, even though we have fewer experts, scientists, and inspectors that are safeguarding our food supply chain and issuing their warnings to whoever's going to listen. This is a subtle thing to notice. Store shelves may still look full, but more of us are noticing empty spots here and there. You may have noticed that your local grocery store has suddenly expanded its aisles or creatively re-merchandised to give the impression of an abundant supply. The fact is that prices are higher, availability is less predictable, and foods that used to be everyday staples are now luxuries or maybe simply missing in some places. What we're seeing in many of the headlines today may not impact us directly tomorrow. We have supplies in massive warehouses and freezers on hand to go through before we have any shortages. We have price increases to endure before we see supply stabilize. You'll likely only feel the olive oil crisis in the form of higher prices, again, as you can pivot to some other oil for cooking. But I wouldn't completely ignore what's happening there. Global and environmental disruptions, they may be out of our control, but we're not powerless. And this is when personal action matters. Start at home. Even without a gardening experience, a few containers of herbs or vegetables on a patio or balcony, they can actually make a difference. Lettuce, radishes, beans, and tomatoes, they grow easily and quickly. Limited on space? Try sprouting or microgreens indoors. Cook more from scratch to know what's in your food and how to make it stretch. And if you already garden, I would encourage you to expand it with perennials like fruit trees or berries. Each season builds skills and confidence that money cannot buy. Be intentional with food storage. Stock staples that you actually eat, rice, oats, or canned goods, pasta, beans, and spices. Build a functional pantry, not just a stash. Store in cool, dry spaces, and rotate items to prevent waste. A solid pantry cuts down store trips and shields you from shortages or price jumps. Also, think about where your food actually comes from. Buying from local growers or markets builds community and gives you more control. My grandmother would say that it's better to pay the grocer than the doctor, and I'd rather pay extra for local organic chicken than settle for something mass-produced and shipped thousands of miles. Even if I eat less, I want better food. If local options are limited, look for bulk dry goods online from trusted sources. Consider stocking your pantry through a co-op or nationally distributing food source. You'll find the inventory and variety from these distributors like Azure Standard. They can keep your costs down for bulk, somewhat seasonal supplies of organic and non-GMO products. And for the record, I have no affiliation with them. I just know that they were a trusted source for many when COVID shut down or they had limited access to grocery stores. Finally, I would encourage you to learn how to preserve what you grow or buy in bulk. Freezing, dehydrating, or canning, it lets you enjoy seasonal abundance year-round. You don't need to know it all. You just need to start with one food and one method. Every step boosts resilience and reduces dependency on increasingly fragile systems. The goal is to take back control from global and national food chains and take more responsibility for what fills our pantries. Much of this involves relearning what past generations did to survive, like cooking from scratch or composting, saving seeds, or storing food without electricity. And these are not extreme measures, they're practical, time-tested skills. What does this mean to us? We can't wait for the system to fix itself. The signs of a growing crisis are everywhere: civil unrest, crop failures, tariffs, wars, extreme weather, and disasters. Each headline points to one thing: food supply. We take grocery store shelves for granted, but one day, today's price complaints may feel like a luxury when we no longer have it. The answer is not to panic, but steady, practical preparation. Small steps now can help you handle bigger disruptions later. Giveaway. This week's winner is going to receive a 72-hour emergency food supply. All you have to do to participate in the giveaway, just simply comment on the video, give it a thumbs up, and complete the giveaway form linked in the description section below. Giving the video a thumbs up will allow us to spread the prepping message further. So also you have to complete the form to be eligible. That's how we randomly pick a winner and contact you. And the information is only accessible to our team here at City Prepping. Using a random selection tool, we'll choose a winner from the entrance and we'll reach out to you via email that you provided on the submitted form. So congrats to our last giveaway winner for the rechargeable emergency flashlight, Caroline Keene. We'll reach out to you shortly to get that sent to you. I always like to end these videos with two things: what I'm working on and hopefully a word of encouragement. As far as what I'm working on, over the last couple of news segments, I've shared that I'm going to be taking time off in July. And I've just honestly been burnt out, kind of been working 12, 15 hours days for the last month or two. And so what I'm trying to do in preparation, and I'll work on it tomorrow and Saturday because I'm going to head out Sunday for a little bit. I'm going to be setting up automation. One of the things that I've done with the Suburban Preppers Homestead course is we showed how to set up irrigation lines and everything. We had all the infrastructure built out. We just never connected it up because I was so backed up on creating content for the other courses. So it's there, it's in place, it just has to be connected up. So I'm going to try to get all that tied in before I leave so that my crops that I have in my garden will still be irrigated. We're going through, I checked the weather next week. We're going to have a heat spike getting up to low hundreds. So I've got to have that in place. Otherwise, my crops will be destroyed while I'm gone. I've set up dog feeders. That's been a long story. I have two Great Pyrenees. They're not self-feeding. In other words, you can't just leave food out because they'll eat and they'll eat and they'll eat and they'll get sick and, they'll gain too much weight. So I have to control how much I release to them. That's been a disaster. I'll probably have to do a follow-up video on what I learned there because I've tried so many systems. But anyway, that's getting set up, and also having to set up water systems for the dogs and the chickens, make sure they have, good, clean, fresh water while I'm gone. I do have neighbors, but I try not to, bother them that often. And again, I just try to automate as much as I can. So, really at this point, I'm just kind of setting up a few temporary measures to get me by. And then when I get back, I'm going to, tie everything together with the irrigation systems. I'm going to do some kind of temporary measures for now, but you'll get it by for now. The other big issue, and I'll have to also work on solutions and talk to neighbors, is in our garden, it is being decimated, unfortunately. So many of my things, strawberries, some tomatoes, other stuff have just been completely leveled by squirrels. Across the street, apparently that's where they live, because I always see them running across the street every time I come out. I know some people come in, well, you got dogs, why not put them in there? I might open up the garden here soon so the dogs can kind of patrol that area. But yeah, it's something I'm trying to figure out. I'm telling you this for two reasons. One, because I want to share what I'm working on, because I'm trying to make advancements, learn. Setting up this area, I thought it would be something so easy and like, oh, this will go smooth, but it's been challenging. I've had a lot of mistakes. I know, whenever there's, YouTubers or Instagram people, influencers, they tend to show you what's positive and what works. A lot of times they don't share with you what doesn't work. And so I will share. I'm going to do a video, like I said, at the end of July, and I'll share what I've learned over the year setting up this homestead, some of the good, the bads. And the key is to start, because it would be easy to say, and this is my mindset, oh, I want it to all be perfect before I get going. It's not going to be that way, especially with gardening. And that's why I encourage you, start now, because we talked about this in this video with the strains on our food supply. I just honestly went into this garden with the idea that in the first year, I'm probably not going to produce a lot. It's going to be a learning curve. I don't know all the things I'm going to face. We've got a lot of heat issues out here, so I'll have to learn how to work around that. As I shared, we've got rodents. So the key is to do something. And that's what I'm doing, and I would encourage you to do, as well. Don't let the unknown stop you. So anyway, that's where I'm at. And again, just being transparent here. So like I said at the beginning of this kind of conclusion, I like to end with a word of encouragement. Today, this video, it's something that we thought about as a team a lot, because I know there's different things going on in the news headlines, but I found that this issue with food production, heat, and these related issues, we've covered it on the channel before, but we're continuing to see this year over year as temperatures rise, and we're seeing this issue become more and more of a problem that we can't ignore. And I always like to try to end with a word of encouragement, but I do want to end with a bit of a warning, for lack of better words. And so I would say if there's one thing that you hopefully take away from this video, it's this. The warning signs, they're not really subtle anymore. Even though you don't really see a lot grabbing the attention in the headlines, if you read between the lines, you can see what's going on. They're flat. These warning signs are flashing in plain sight right there again in the headlines if you know how to read them. There's crop failures, there's record-breaking heat waves, there's export restrictions, there's animal disease outbreaks, and geopolitical conflict. And each of these things separately would be one thing, but when you begin to add them together, they overlap and they really add together to impact a food system that's already under incredible pressure. And look, these are not isolated incidents. Again, they're interconnected signals that are pointing to a larger unfolding crisis. And we're not headed toward a food crisis someday. Here's a key word. We're not heading to a food crisis someday in the distant future. We're already in the early stages of one now. The cracks in the system, they're forming faster than they can be patched, and we can't assume everything's going to return to normal. The changes we're seeing in prices, availability, and even product quality are just the beginning. But here's the encouraging part, and this is your signal, not to panic, but to act, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. You still have time today to make decisions that will absolutely matter tomorrow. So start where you are, with whatever you have. Build your pantry with foods that you've already eaten, that you actually enjoy. Start your first garden bed or expand what you're already growing. Learn how to dehydrate, freeze, or can food so that you can preserve what's in season or on sale. My encouragement is to develop the simple, sustainable habits that create security over time. In these small steps, they may not seem urgent right now, but later they're going to make all the difference. Because once the disruption becomes super obvious to everyone, the shelves, they're not going to just be picked over, they're going to be harder to refill. And the cost of inaction will be measured not just in dollars, but in missed opportunities to prepare while you still could. So my encouragement is this: do not wait for things to get worse to start getting ready. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to do everything all at once. You just have to begin one step at a time. And again, you're not doing this alone. This channel, this growing community, we're here to help walk you through every step of the way. If you want to begin taking more responsibility for the stability of your own food supply and take it out of the hands and the whims of global influences, I would encourage you to watch a couple of videos that we're going to post here on the side of the screen. And we'll also post them below in the description and comments section. You have to start building a supply. The first video is how to easily build a 3-week supply of food, and the other is a video on the 5 worst food storage mistakes that you can make. Between these 2 videos, you're going to have the basis for weathering any immediate food supply difficulties that could come your way for at least a little while. As always, stay safe out there.